So again, talked about a lot of nice theory, but how does that actually look on the charts? So we're just going to go through a bit of price action that some of you should hopefully recognize from the earlier lessons in the putting it all together section. But let's now apply our knowledge of what we just spoke about the medium time phrases. So in this example, the higher time frame we're going to use is the 4-hour chart, and the medium time frame you're going to use is the M15. Okay, so this is our higher time frame. In reality, I personally would still be looking at the daily and having a good idea of where we're at, but let's just keep it simple. Stick to those 3 time frames. 4-hour is as high as we're going to go. You can see that the swing trend is bullish, had a bit of an internal pullback after that initial bust, but we've just continued to the upside. And then the section of price action we're going to be looking at is here. Okay, so I'm not doing bar replay. This is already all played out. But essentially, we're going to be looking from the point of where price is here, okay, to where we are now, okay, when we go down to the M15. So essentially, all we need to be thinking about the higher time frame is we're bullish, but we've had a boss, reasonably starting to get overextended now. So at this point, as we start to kind of use this exercise, we're going to be thinking that, you know, the 4-hour chart might be starting to pull back. However, if we look left, just scroll over here, because obviously it's quite far away to find our nearest level of supply, we haven't quite reached our refined pivot level of supply. We are within the range, but not quite into here just yet. So there is potential cause, you know, for higher prices. We may not get that 4-hour pullback until we hit our 4-hour level of supply. Okay, so you know, if you think about what kind of phase you're in at the moment, we're sort of, you know, on its way to that higher time frame level. We haven't quite reached it yet. So we jump down to the M15, and I've pre-populated this all on there, just to turn into another 60-minute video, and I've put this here. So I was taking a screenshot, so I'm not sure how well that will turn up on the screen recording, but you guys should have a high resolution copy of this, and it'll be in the notes below the video. So this section here was, like I was saying, that first bit on the 4-hour chart where we haven't quite reached our higher time frame POI. So we know we're bullish on both the higher time frame and our medium time frame at that point. Okay, well, let me take a bit more slowly. We've had our M15, or yeah, our medium time frame swing pullback. Then we had our break of structure. So just keep your eyes on this sort of level here. When price is at this point in the market, just imagine you can't see any of this, right? And price is moving, you want to get into a trade for whatever reason, right? What can you do at this point? Well, you know, we've had a boss. We know we're expecting at some point an M15 pullback could continue. We are bullish. So actually, do you know what? Technically, we are still in phase A at this point, right? We're pro swing and we're pro internal. So you could look to wait for this to pull back and try and capture and get long on that internal higher low and try and get, you know, another quick move potentially up to higher time frame demand. You could totally do that. However, in this scenario, we don't have any demand within the leg, so there'd be nothing to do. So literally, as price is doing this, nothing's going on for me. There's nothing that meets my plan. I'm either waiting for price to come into here and then start to develop and react, or I'm waiting for price to pull down into a demand zone, right? And a real clean one being here. There is a slight pullback here. It's a bit hard to see, but that candle fails to break the previous candle's high. So, you know, potentially there's some demand there, but there's nothing in the leg. So just chill. For there to be a shock, price would have to break down here. So literally at this moment, nothing's going on. We've just had a straight movement up and a pullback. We're not coming off anywhere. We haven't pulled into demand. This is where you have to be patient. Don't sit on your lower time frame getting into all sorts of madness. Just let your medium time frame develop. Yeah, medium time frame ideas, medium time frame POIs, lower time frame entries. So as we start pulling back, I literally set my alert maybe on that demand, and then set your alert at the higher time frame level. And then obviously as we start to pull back a bit more, then you can go, right, well, now that's enough for me to call that my internal high. Okay, so you could set your alert on that because it's a bit more of an interesting piece of structure. So all of this, nothing's going on for me, nothing that meets my plan, nothing. Okay, we get a break of that high. Okay, then we start to retrace. Now, at this point, you know, if you're looking to short after a sweep of that high, you would be counter swing and counter internal, right? Because everything's bullish. We haven't come into a higher time frame level. I mean, there might be an M15 POI that all the way there to the left, but how relevant is that going to be? I'm not really that interested. Really, I want to be, you know, if I'm going to trade heavily counter trend, at least wait for your higher time frame levels to be hit. Or wait for what? Wait for phase C. At least wait for something convincing to show you that structure is shifting and price is pulling back, right? So we sweep that high. We get a bearish chalk. So again, at this moment, I wouldn't be interested in this. The only times I want to be doing that really is when we come into a higher time frame level at least, and ideally a refined, you know, M15 level from within here if you want to go look left. And then think about it, and you want to see a strong liquidation to that level. So at this moment we had nothing, right? This high didn't achieve anything, it didn't break any structure, so we've swept it here, but it's not a strong liquidation because this high didn't actually achieve anything, right? It didn't break any structure. So at this moment here, all you have is, a sweep, like a weak sweep and a chock. So, could you look to get involved in here? Potentially, because that would be a bearish chock, but we haven't mitigated our hard time frame level yet. So I wouldn't advise that. Whereas if you're just a bit patient, and then boom, now we get like a clear shift in structure. All right, we break and close below that low. Now at least you have some form of strong structure to trade from, i.e. short from this strong high, right? Because actually managed to break that low there. So now you're entering into phase C, where the internal trend has shifted bearish. We have that bearish IBOS. This can become our strong internal high, right? So now we are counter swing and we are pro internal. Now, yes, there's still potential that we haven't mitigated our high time frame level. So, we could literally just go higher. There's always that in the back of your mind. We have not yet had a strong liquidation. This was just a sweep of a weak high, right? So this could be your fake break to generate strong sales, strong buy side liquidity behind that high, right? And then that could be the strong liquidation into there. All of those things are possibilities. It's all confidence you may want to consider. But, that's pretty decent, right? We've had somewhat of a sweep, strong IBOS to the downside. So now you have a strong internal high, and this can be where you can consider trading phase C. So if we're in phase C and we're looking to get short, what is the objective? We are looking to play the medium time frame swing pullback, i.e. M15 swing pullback, right? Internal structure shifted bearish to do what? To facilitate the swing pullback down into the discount, down into discounted demand. So if we're getting short, that's our expectation of price, right? Now we could, like I said, the second bit here, or anticipate a medium time frame swing reversal if the hard time frame suggests. So if we went back to the 4-hour chart, which is our hard time frame in this instance, right? What you could consider in this scenario is because the 4 hours bullish, if we had mitigated into 4-hour supply, right? And then the M15 had a bearish IBOS up here, then yes, the M15 might still be bullish at that point, right? You might have an M15 swing low here, but you might anticipate that because we've hit the 4-hour supply, we may be getting a 4-hour swing pullback, right? Down in towards the swing low. So if the 4 hour is going to have a swing pullback, what is the M15 going to do, right? If we were there, what would the M15 do? The M15 swing would switch bearish, right? To facilitate that swing pullback, because if I zoom out, this is that 4-hour swing lows all the way down here. Yeah. That would be here. So if we come into hard time frame supply and then we're expecting that hard time frame pullback in towards our hard time frame low, what's going to happen? The M15 swing trend is going to switch bearish to facilitate that pullback. Okay. So if you had enough confidence and reason to believe that you think that 4-hour swing pullback may be starting, right? Then potentially you could get in short here on that IBOS with the potential that the M15, your medium time frame internal structure, may stay bearish to facilitate that 4-hour pullback where the M15 swing trend was switch bearish. But in this instance, do we really have like real high conviction to believe that's what's going to happen? Well, we haven't had a strong liquidation yet. And in more simple terms, we haven't hit 4-hour supply, right? 4-hour pullbacks are mainly going to occur from 4-hour supply and demand zones, right? So at this moment, I wouldn't get too fancy with the forecast. I just think M15 IBOS, M15 swing pullback. Keep it nice and simple. That's your expectation. Don't swing for the fences. If you're getting short, don't be thinking, right, I'm going to hold 400 pips to the downside, right? Pay yourself. Whether you do fixed 5R, whether you just target this low, whether you want to target a bit further down into, the EQ of the swing leg, whether you want to target refined demand, right? That's going to be down to you. But it's about, as long as you understand what the objective is and the expectation, then you can make an informed decision in general, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it, to be honest. I don't want to get too bogged down in all of this. I said, best use after a hard time frame POI mitigation. We don't quite have that. Best use after an MTF swing boss. Well, we do have that, right? Because we've had the boss here. So it makes sense now to play the swing pullback because we're expecting that after the swing boss. And then the start of the the start of the medium time frame swing pullback before price has reached the swing EQ. So in this case, right, we think it's the start of the M15 swing pullback. The EQ would be around here. Let's draw it on properly. I've got the range tool on. Down to here, right? So we haven't got there, we haven't pulled back, so there's good reason to believe there's good cause for lower prices for the swing to pull back to the discount, right? So that's all good. So this is kind of pretty much, well, not perfect, but really, really high probability to be looking for those sort of counter trend moves, right? With phase C. So optional to wait for a MTF chalk. So what does that mean? Well, when you're looking at shorting from here, or potentially even this POI here, whether you want to wait for price to come in and then give you that M15 chalk, that medium time frame chalk, to confirm the end of the internal pullback, to give you a bit more confidence that this high is going to hold and we're not just, it's not an early trap, then you might want to wait for that. It's optional. I think in this instance it looks pretty good, right? You've had a sweep, nice strong movement down, we've got inducement, etc., etc. So happy to look for shorts from within there. And if you wanted to wait for a chalk and or scale in, what do we get? We get the internal pullback into the extreme, nice strong movement to the downside, we get the bearish chalk, and then there's another entry there, okay? So hopefully you should recognize this from the putting it all together section where we went through this on FX replay, and you can go and revise that. I think it's day one actually on the M1 entries. I'm not gonna go over that in here because there's no point on me repeating myself. The key lesson from this is understanding the phases and the expectations, and we're basically using this as our guide for that, okay? So another phase C trade there, right? And then we get another IBOS. So at this point, this becomes our new strong internal high, right? And then we start to pull back. So you're still in phase C at this point, okay? But are we still, is it still optimal to keep looking for shorts? Well, what was the objective of phase C? The objective is to facilitate the swing pullback, right? Because we're not really, the other objective is to anticipate that the M15 is going to switch bearish, that your medium time frame is going to do that. But remember, the higher time frame doesn't really suggest that just yet. I mean, it could do because the 4 hour has had a boss. Remember, we have broken structure here on the 4 hour chart. So we are expecting a 4 hour pullback, but we don't really have, because this is where we're talking about now, we don't really have any confluence or confirmation to suggest that that's going to happen yet, right? We haven't broken any structure. We haven't mitigated our supply level yet. So you don't really have a lot of evidence to really say with a lot of conviction, right, that the 4 hour swing pullback is going to start and the M15 is going to switch bearish, okay? So if you're going to keep following the internal structure, the bearish internal structure, and trade against the bullish swing, i.e. phase C, the best time to do it is when? It's then at the start before we pull back down to the discount. So if I measure on that, okay, now where are we when we come down here? We're now below the EQ, we're starting to come down into the discount, okay? So I'm not saying you can't keep following the internal order flow when this happens, it's just you need to be thinking how high probability is it for you, right? You need to make these decisions and weigh that into your decision making, okay? So we pull back, nothing really goes on, and then we come down. I've just refined this because it's quite a big zone, right? I just refined it to the body, but essentially we've come down into our extreme. So now we can start thinking about, we go back to that plan, we're around here, okay? Because when you want to trade in line with the swing, so getting long because we're bullish, but you're trading against the internal, technically, you could also look for longs from within here, right? There's a kind of crappy POI here. I think price trades through it anyway. Like you could have been looking for longs potentially around here on a lower time frame when price comes in, and that would be phase B, right? Pro swing and counter internal. At this point here, when price is here and you come into this like POI, first of all, whenever price is coming into POI, what I want you to do is go, what phase am I in? And you can quickly work that out because you look at structure. Well, I know the internal structure is bearish, so I'm counter internal, and I'm pro swing because the swing is bullish. I'm looking for longs in the barn. Okay, so you're in phase B. Okay, cool. Then you ask yourself, what is the objective when you're trying to trade phase B? Well, the objective is best used when you're anticipating the end of the swing pullback and you're anticipating the internal reversal, that internal is going to switch bullish. At this point, could that happen? Yes, it could happen, but does it look likely? Well, for starters, we're not quite really in the discount just yet. This looks like a terrible POI. Like it's just kind of just halfway in the leg. There's no real clear like pivot in price. It's a bullish candle as well. There's no inducement. It didn't sweep. There's no kind of real clear direct flip. Arguably, it flipped that wick, but a lot of momentum coming down. There's like no liquidity built here. This looks like it's toast, right? It does not look very good to be buying long from there. So this is where you can avoid that loss potentially, right? Because you understand there's cause for lower prices. Or what you might want to do is this is a time where you wait for a chalk first, at least wait for a chalk to signal that internal pullback may be starting, because you could play that move and you just be longing into here for them at a potential another internal leg to the downside. So do you see how like these are both the same phase, but when you ask yourself these questions, go, when is it best used? When we pull back past the swing EQ, which we haven't just yet, when we've mitigated the extreme medium time frame and or higher time frame POI. Well, we haven't done that yet because that would be down here. So this doesn't look that great, does it? So this is when, if you want to trade from it, it might be best to at least wait for an M15 chalk or just leave it, just ignore it, right? And yeah, that's pretty much it, right? You guys can see that. Whereas when we come down here, it's the same phase. It's still phase B, but we're now in extreme, right? This is a level that has to hold. Now in this case, this is quite a big zone. So, there's reason to believe you could have a bit of a movement into here. You could come up into that internal supply and we could come lower, right? That's something you have to bear in mind. That's what I mean. Every single piece of price action is unique and you need to weigh it up and you need to make the decisions. But here's the guide. So if you're at this moment and you realize, okay, internal is still bearish, but the swing is bullish, so I'm in phase B. Okay, but what's the objective of phase B? It's to anticipate the end of the swing pullback and internal reversal. Well, this is the level kind of in which it has to hold. So I'm just going to get rid of this orange line. Then if you see that big like reaction, okay, aggressiveness coming in, that's showing you that, right, probably big orders are being filled. This is looking pretty good. At this moment, you may want to consider getting long, okay? And I believe there was like an M1 entry in here, pretty sort of aggressive advanced one. Now, at that moment, what you might want to ask yourself is there enough risk to reward to the internal supply and demand and the strong internal high low? Well, at that moment, right, that's your strong internal high and that's your weak internal low because the internal structure is bearish at the moment. And you're trading directly into this medium time frame supply, right, the M15 supply that caused the break of that low. So again, it's down to you. I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. It's down to you as a trader to make a decision at this point. Do you want to trade against that, to anticipate the movement, or do you have enough risk to reward to get in long and then remove your risk as price comes into here in case we continue bearish, right? There could be cause for lower prices. We haven't had a strong liquidation yet. Do you know what I mean? You need to weigh all of that confidence in. So if you're not sure, what can you do? Well, you just wait, right? Let's see what happens next. Price then breaks structure to the upside, okay? So now when price is here, now the internal structure has shifted bullish, right? It's a pretty good sign that that swing pullback is over and that we can start to target this high. Now, there is a slight caveat to that, and I've spoken about this in the earlier lessons, whereby this wasn't the most convincing of internal pullbacks. It was a little bit small, so there's some reason to believe that that could just be one big leg down, and we could pull back into here to then continue lower. Okay, something to hold in the back of your mind. But for the most part, we've had a very strong reaction from the extreme, big movement up, and we've broken that high and seen supply fail. Okay, so there's pretty good reasons to believe that the internal structure is now bullish, and we're now wanting to be looking at phase A really, pro swing and pro internal, and that's where we have the green section. Now, just before we get to here, could you look for a movement here, right? Well, yeah, you could, because there's a decent level of supply that caused that movement away, and you could look for a movement in here. Like I said, in case that was one big push down and come back up, we could get another movement. That adds some confidence to it, but for the most part, just assume the internal structure has shifted bullish, the swing pullback is now over, and we're now looking for this move. So could you play that quick pullback play, that quick internal pullback into here? Yeah, you could. I mean, it's up to you. But you just have to manage your expectations of price, that now the internal is bullish, you're just playing that. So again, if you're shorting here, you're counter swing and counter internal. So not really the best time to do it, and you want to depend on if risk was on your side. But probably for the most part, ignore those trades. Focus on what? Focus on the high probability stuff, right? We have alignment now. So pro swing, pro internal, you're back to here. What is the objective? Target the weak swing high and low, right? Because you have full alignment, decent probability the swing pullback's over, bullish IBOS, everything's aligned. Now you're here. And this is when as soon as price comes into your POI, you can drop down to your lower time frame entry model without having to wait for your medium time frame chalk at the mitigation, right? Because you have pretty good confidence that we're going to go. And that's it really. So yeah, hopefully you can kind of, start to use this as your guide to just help you. Sometimes price action isn't always going to look the same. Sometimes there's more space. We have bigger ranges. There's better risk to reward. You can factor in all of the confidence, but if you keep referring back to this, it should really help. And again, as always, price action is not going to be nice, clean order flow like this, right? We know there's going to be times where we get super choppy price action, like, even if we start to look here. Like, do you know what I mean? How easy is that to read? What's the clear intentions at this moment? Highs and lows are just getting swept. Nothing's really being respected that well, right? There's a lot of liquidity sweeps. It's range bound, and that's where you're just going to go, okay, I don't have a good read in it. Like, you don't always know straight away. Like here, you might think, okay, there's a pullback, then we switch bullish, right? Try and get long in here, and then if that starts to fail again, right, then you can look for the shorts from this high, right, to play the pullback. But then that fails, it's like, okay, maybe that we're just sweeping highs and lows here, and that's when you want to realize, okay, I'm not going to keep being aggressive. I'm going to wait for some clear intentions and something to shift. So then, for those of you who can see this, like, when is this from? Like, the 9th to around the 12th, so it's 3 days, but for some people that can feel like an eternity. If you just wait, when would you get nice, clean price action? And that's what we try to preach, is like, in those moments, don't keep forcing it. Don't let your confidence get knocked. Just realize where you are, and then just be patient and wait for this stuff. Wait for the good stuff. And yeah, it can really help you. So yeah, hopefully that helps you to visualize the theory a little bit more, and just try and apply this guide to bits of price action and really practice it. And hopefully it can help you map your way through the market.